Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'm going to confine my comments to the bill because I have respect for the institution, not the way in which this bill was brought to the floor. First, the very notion of democratic rule is being undermined by this particular bill. You know, we may not agree with everything that happens, and we may not want to spend our money and tax dollars on certain ways, but we do have a very key ingredient in our democratic process, and that is when 50% plus one of a group of people who are allowed to vote make a decision, we graciously step aside and accept that decision and live by the rules. Those are called elections, and you're right, you've said it before, they do have consequences. And that is the same with union membership, union dues, and with union organizations. No one ever imposes a union on a business. The members of the working group of that organization and a bargaining unit come together, file cards saying they request to become members of a union, then have to go through an election process if it is so ordered by the Michigan Labor Relations Act and that board. And then, and only then, with a vote of 50% or more, is a union installed and accredited in a business. That's called democracy. Also, under the current National Labor Relations Act, no one is required to be a member of that union. So I find it particularly distasteful that we are debating the very merits of democracy in a democratic house where there's a group of people who want to undermine democratic rule. I can tell you that I support the right of people to come together and to collectively bargain, to organize, to vote for a union.
Members and guests, I am going to respect that you request that you respect the House rules that prohibit outward display of support or opposition. Speaker recognizes Representative Barnett.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just like when I vote, sometimes I don't get my way, but I respect the decision that has been made. And that's the way it has been in the state of Michigan since our inception. When people vote in a working group to join a union, that has been respected, and that union has had full collective bargaining rights in the state with some minor limitations for essential services. What bothers me most today is that this bill was not discussed ahead of time. It was discharged on the floor, then substituted on the floor. Members of unions came up to protest, and they were locked out of this building. This is their house, Mr. Speaker. They should be allowed in the door. Finally, please, I respect the decorum of this building, and I ask that everybody who is here to support my words, please do so silently, so that I may finish what I have to say. I also want to point out that under the National Labor Relations Act, no one is forced or compelled to join an organization that they don't wish to be a member of. But what we do require is that there be no free riders, that people who benefit from a collective bargaining agreement have to pay simply the cost of that agreement, nothing more. And in exchange, they get to have their grievances covered by the union that they so much don't wish represents them, until they're in trouble, and then they go to union leadership and say, protect me. Unfortunately, this bill does not address that problem, sir. What it does is it say, you don't have to pay at all, and we still have to take your grievance. It's not fair. The duty of fair representation is the duty of fair representation, and it should be respected by people who pay dues, and it shouldn't be afforded to those who don't. You know, I've talked to many people in this chamber who live in townships, and in many townships and subdivisions, their roads aren't plowed. So they come together as a homeowners association, and they ask that as a homeowners association, they be assessed a small amount of money so that they get their roads plowed in the winter instead of waiting for the county to get around to it. And everybody who lives in one of those subdivisions and pays for that snow plowing knows very well the names of their neighbors who don't pay. And yet their roads are plowed just the same, because to avoid that house would block the whole purpose of what was done to plow the roads. So I stand here today and ask this chamber to do the right thing, respect democratic rule, respect the democratic process, and realize that right to work does not create a single job, that the great auto manufacturers, Chrysler and Ford, Chrysler and GM, who have decided to expand their operations, did not choose the right to work state of Indiana. They chose the free working state of Michigan and Ohio, where the great trained workers are to be found. I ask you again, please, members, vote no on this bill, because what they also added in this sub is an appropriation that makes this bill referendum proof. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you.